Welcome to the Book Me Help channel. Today we're joined by a very experienced coach who's going to give us some insights into emotional agility, systems thinking, and also strength-based coaching. So you call yourself an eclectic coach, but what kind of things do you specialize in? Particularly, what problems do you find yourself helping people with?
So, my real passion, I think, is helping people lead well. So, that is people who are leading in a work context, it might be in a family context, it might be in a community context. So, I coach leaders, but I train leaders. So, my Forest School training, I'm training people to be able to work with teams of adults, with teams of really competent educators, or they might be adults who self-harm, they might be working with children in the woods. So I train those people to be leaders, and we look at what does leadership mean. So I'm doing that with one hat on. And then when I'm coaching people, I'm helping them think, how do they use their strengths and skills to influence, to make a difference in the work that they're doing or a difference in their families?
As a coach, a professional coach, what does leadership mean to you?
That's a really simple question and a really complicated one all at the same time, I think, Lars. It To me, leadership is about doing the job that we're given to do. So if you've got a role and you're a head teacher of a school, or you're a CEO of a business, or you're managing a team, then you've got your role there to get the work done. But I really believe it's about how do we get the best out of the people that we're working with. So, how do we really help people to flourish and thrive? So, if you can do that, you get the work done. If you just focus on the work, you'll never get anywhere. You'll have people who are not feeling safe, they don't feel valued, and they don't learn and grow and change. So, for me, leadership is how do we help everybody who we are working with? How do we help them to grow and change and develop and be the best version of themselves?
What is exactly strength-based leadership?
It is understanding and kind of seeing the gold in people. So it's helping people themselves to identify what inside themselves is a strength that they bring to their work. What are those hidden traits that they don't even know about, or the ones that only their nearest and dearest know about, but they never bring to the workplace, or they don't bring into their community work. And it is how do we help somebody really understand themselves and not listen to all the voices that are in our heads. You know, the ones where you've got from school where somebody says you can't sing, or somebody says you're rubbish at football, or you're not very good at team sports, or you're no good at working with other people. And we've all got those voices in our heads. And it's how do we stop listening to them and start listening to that voice inside us that says who we are. So it's about knowing yourself. And the thing I think coaches do when we're working well is we encourage and help our clients to find that person inside themselves.
How does somebody identify their own strengths?
Having a sort of playful approach to thinking about your life, and we find that all of those things, all those really playful memories, can be brilliant metaphors for us to take into that coaching conversation about what are our strengths and what are the things that really matter to us. I think strengths is important and values is super important as well.
What is emotional agility?
And emotional agility is about understanding that emotions are neither right nor wrong, they're information. And they're super useful. And all the emotions that human beings feel are very important and vitally important. And accepting them and honoring them and recognizing them is is a it, it's vital to be a healthy human being. So I wasn't angry on the outside ever. I just stuffed it all inside. Because of course I was angry. I just didn't let anyone else know. And that's really, really bad for healthy relationships. And it's not very good for your health either. But learning that anger is telling us something, and often behind anger is fear, understanding what emotions are telling us, and then understanding what other people's emotions might be telling us. And they are signaling what needs are being met and unmet. And once you can have that understanding, you can really have compassion for the people that are, where there's steam coming out of their ears in the car park, or somebody who's rude to you in the supermarket. Actually, I can think, well, I wonder what's going on for them, and it helps me be much more curious about what's going on in their life, so I can be less judgmental. And I can also be less judgmental about myself too.
How do you deal with somebody that's not emotionally agile, but stuck in, let's say, swings of anger, mood swings, just not being able to contain themselves? How do you deal with them?
I learned about nonviolent communication, the work of Marshall Rosenberg. And that kind of, that changed everything for me, because I realized that what he was saying was, you've got these two voices in your head. He talks about the jackal and the giraffe. And it's a bit like some of the other work that I've read by people like Marilee Adams, who's talked about the choice map, where you can have a judger mindset or a learner mindset. So you can be judging somebody or learning. And the learner mindset is where you're wondering what's going on for that person in their life. You go, well, something must be happening that's making this really difficult for them. And the judger mindset is the one that's like, well, they're always like that. Why are they always like that? And then, so realizing that people throughout history have faced angry people and jealous people and upset people. And you can either dive into it and be defensive, or you can come to that situation and go, I wonder what's going on. And actually, most people, what they really want more than anything else is to be listened to. I did learn that if I listened and I'd say to somebody, you sound really, really fed up, or you sound really cross, can you help me understand what this is about? If I could come it like that, it diffused the situation, but it also showed that I cared, that space is a vitally important place. And it's that space that we as coaches are kind of inhabiting, I think, a lot of the time. We're helping people to be in this space. We're helping them think about different responses that they might take into a meeting, or different responses that they might have when their boss is asking them to do something that's unrealistic, or is belittling them in a meeting, or whatever situation it is they're struggling with.
If somebody is, I wouldn't say emotionally unstable, but we all know that person in the office that really can't hold their emotions in, or is being a little bit sometimes toxic in certain situations. What are the best mechanisms to actually address that?
So if you're talking about it from a leadership point of view, if somebody in my team, I think it would be helping the client to think about, what ways can you address it? How can you bring that person into a conversation and actually, away from everybody else, say, I've noticed that when this happens, you do this. I've noticed when that happened yesterday, you did this. Is there something going on? So it's actually a curious response. It's not I'm on the attack. It's how can I understand what's happening? And that leads you into that conversation. I think there does come a point where, if you're in a leadership role and this keeps on happening and somebody isn't responding, that you need to look at, the sort of going down the route of behavior management type things that you would do in an office or a work situation. Most often, though, an open conversation about, I noticed this, is anything going on, can I help? That will bring a whole load of things out into the open that need to be understood.
For a leader, what is the right level of emotions they can bring to the office?
I think it's super important for somebody to be authentic. So if you're a calm, quiet person, you're not going to suddenly bring loads of hyped up emotion into a work situation. But actually acknowledging when you are, as the leader, when you're feeling worried, when you're fearful, when you're anxious, when you're tired, actually making it okay for people to express emotions, I think is a very useful thing in a work context. And that can be quite difficult for men. I think maybe women are more used to doing that. And I don't want to make a huge generalization, but I've worked with men who would think it was very unseemly to express emotion. They're happy to be angry. I think men are usually quite competent and confident about being angry, because as boys they're encouraged to do that. You're allowed to do that. Girls are not allowed to be angry in many cultures. So it's not okay for a girl or a woman to be angry, and it's not okay for a girl or a woman to have leadership qualities, because they might be called bossy. So it's quite a challenging thing. But in a way, having those open conversations within a work context, within a team, where you are building safety so that you can have those open conversations about emotions, and how as a leader you can say, I am learning about this, I want to get better at it, can you help me, I think is a really valuable place to be. But you've got to be a strong leader to do that. And as well, we don't want to overshare. So we don't want, a work context where your boss comes in and tells you everything that's going on. But what you do want is to have somebody who is leading you, who actually shows what it means to be emotionally intelligent. It's a tall ask, I think, for a lot of people. But that's why people come to coaching, I think, as well, because they want to get better at their jobs.
Leaders that you have coached, have you seen them become more resourceful and resilient over a virtual coaching session?
Yes, I have. And I think it's not over one coaching session. It's over a period of coaching, because you have a conversation, they think about something, they might decide they're going to go away and practice something. And getting people in a coaching conversation to think about the quality of the listening that they bring to their work relationships or their personal relationships, that can change everything. We realize that this is something I want to do. I want to be better at these conversations in my workplace or in my family. And because I want to do it, my motivation is going to be there, and I will have the courage and the bravery to do it.
If a leader came to you, or a manager or anybody in the executive environment came to you and asked, how many sessions should I have? What would you say?
I would suggest somebody started with a program of 6, and we could look at the timing of that. But I think 6 sessions does help you get some really good work done. And it also helps you decide if this is something that is making enough of a difference to commit.
If somebody books 6 sessions, what can they expect to get out of that from an executive coach?
I think the important thing is building that relationship of trust, which is quite an important, no, it's a super important aspect of the coaching work. I think what they get is that opportunity to really start to change, to actually look at developing their own skills and their own practice in terms of their intelligence, their emotional intelligence with their team, but also knowing what direction do they want to be going in. So I think a program of 6 sessions is a very good introduction to really discovering, this thing that I want to deal with. It might be quite broad, it might be very focused, but I think that gives you a really good chance to get somewhere different with 6 sessions.
What are the top 5 things that a coach can help a leader with?
I think the most important is listening. So that I'm listening to them, because it can be quite lonely being a leader. And to have somebody who's listening and not judging. So I think it's listening, it's non-judgment, which is super important. I think empathy, and I toy with this one a little bit, but I think empathy is really important. I, as a coach, am able to be in the shoes of the person who's talking, but I'm only doing that to have a feel and an understanding of what their circumstance is like. It's about being in tune with somebody, and that's a powerful thing. What's another one? Let me think. I think the ability, a coach, and certainly when I'm with somebody, I can say, well, what are your options? So it's that question, it's that opening out the question and broadening their thinking. And that often is, Nancy Klein's Time to Think work, which I love, I really love. Nancy Klein's kind of, is there anything else you're thinking or feeling or want to say? And that question unlocks so much for people, because they can think they've got to the end of everything. They've come up with all their solutions, and then they go, oh no, there is this other thing I hadn't even thought about. What's the fifth one? What would I say, Lars? Time. Time is really important. And then the other one is accountability. And accountability is not that, so I'm being cheeky, I'm going for 6. Accountability is not that I'm checking up to see if you've done the thing you've said you'd do. It's accountability that says, how are you doing with the work that you want to be doing? Because you might have, in the interim time between talking with me, you might have actually changed what you want to do. And you're not sticking to what you agreed in the conversation with me because I'm not your head teacher. I'm somebody here to give you the space, to give you that thinking space.
So for a leader, what are the main things that they can expect from a coaching session in terms of skills, in terms of a guide or anything like that?
Well, certainly, how do you coach your team? So how do you use the skills that you learn through coaching, and how do you bring those skills into your own work as a leader? And that sort of coaching leadership skills, I think, is super important. Tied into that is, how do you have tricky conversations? How do you have tricky conversations that are open and honest and impactful, that move things forward, that aren't blaming anybody, that aren't seeking to find fault with anybody, but are actually solution focused and looking at the whole situation? How do we go, this isn't the person that's the problem, what's going on all around this situation, and how do we change it? And that's where I think coaching is very valuable, in that we look at the whole situation, the whole system.
What would you say to somebody that's thinking about coaching but is sitting on the wall?
Try it. Just try it. It's like, when you're a child and you're given something new to eat and you kind of go, oh, don't know if I'm going to like it. And it could be something really delicious and you just got to give it a lick and see. Well, I think coaching is like that, because I think before I did my coaching training, I was a bit sniffy about life coaching. I was like, oh, life coaching is for people who don't know what they want to do, And then I thought, well, who knows what they want to do? And life is really complicated. I would say just try it. It's like that moment when you're, standing at the edge of the sea before you get into it, and you can see all these people out there having a lovely time, and you dip your toes in and it's really cold, and you're like, oh, I don't know, I'm going to do it. But actually, by the time you've got out there to the deep water and you're sort of bobbing about, it's absolutely delicious and super liberating. And I think when I started getting coaching myself, I found it amazing, because I could have these really deep, meaningful conversations, somebody who listened to me with such intent that my thinking just exploded, and I had such a sense of freedom and autonomy and agency. And I'd never had that before. So I would say, if you're thinking about coaching, just give it a go.
You use systems thinking in coaching. What does that mean to leaders that are trying to navigate difficult times?
And there are some difficult times right now, aren't there? I started to understand this when I was teaching the ecology of woodlands, and realizing that every species is connected to every species. And what we do in this part of the woodland is going to impact this part of the woodland. And what's happening in the weather is impacting the woodland, all of that. And helping people to understand that you've got this context that you're in with your team, but there's all of this other stuff going on out here. And you've got each of your individuals has got their own system. They've got their own things going on in their lives and in their families and, you know, in the context of where they live. And if you're managing a team that's, you know, in other countries, if you've got a global organization, you're managing a team that's got people, you have got so many different contexts and situations to be dealing with, but understanding that they all impact on each other, a bit like the solar system. And actually, when everything is working well and it's all in balance, everybody can do their jobs well. And it's when something's going wrong and you've got those friction points, it's like in your car engine, you've got one thing that goes wrong and it can impact everything else. So it's helping people to see it as, it's not about finding the person who's at fault. It's about looking at what's going on in that situation and how can we change it. And I think that's an important part of systems thinking, is knowing where to get the help and where to get the expertise.
What's your vision for the future of coaching?
Well, I would love it to be available to everyone. Coaching could completely change the culture of an organization or of a profession. And I think those professions that have supervision really support people to do their work well in an emotionally intelligent way.
Mm.
And I think coaching is one of the very best ways to support teams, to support professions, to be more professional, but to do it in a way that's holistic, where you see the whole person, because that's when people flourish and thrive. And I believe that anyone in a leadership role, they don't go into that role thinking, I want to make people's lives miserable and I want to do a bad job. But actually, for people to be able to do their very best work, to turn up at work and be their best version of themselves, they've got to have that support. And I think coaching is the way that we can do that for people, especially if we can teach people to coach each other.
So we have a tradition on this podcast to ask every one of our interviewees, what's a daily practice you could recommend to anyone?
Go outside. Go outside and look at the clouds and deep breathe. Get some real oxygen into your lungs and don't watch the weather forecast. Just go outside and be in the weather.
Okay. We have another tradition on this podcast, which is rapid fire questions. So let's get started. Why does virtual coaching work?
Because you can be super flexible. It can happen wherever anybody wants to be coached, and you can have a connection across the internet.
What is emotional agility and why does it matter?
Well, we talk about physical agility and how your body needs to be able to move and be strong and healthy. And emotional agility is the same thing for your intelligence around your emotions, understanding your own emotions and recognizing them in other people so you can have effective relationships and conversations.
How can emotions become valuable information to somebody, especially leaders?
I think the first thing is not to be scared of them and to see them all as useful and to start to understand what's behind them. So understanding the needs that are being expressed behind those emotions, and they can be needs that are met or unmet.
Why do leaders need to embrace feelings and emotions, not suppress them?
Of course, suppressing them is not very good for your health for a start. And I think understanding how the emotions that you express and having control over the emotions that you express in a healthy way so that you're not exploding with anger. Or my favorite that I do is I just go super silent and then I don't communicate very well with people. Actually, if you understand yourself and you're able to express your emotions in healthy ways, then you can have good connections in the work context and you can be effective in the work that you're doing.
What are 5 core human needs that everybody shares?
Oh, now I always have fun with this one. These come from William Glasser's choice theory, but lots of other people agree and have the 5 that I think cover everything. The first one is survival. We all remember that from Maslow. And then freedom. That's really important. Freedom or autonomy, that sense that you own your own life. Love and belonging. We all know that's super important. Fun and play. we forget that as adults, and we forget that in our work as well, how important fun and play is. And the last one is power, and that's influence. How do you influence the people around you and influence the situation that you're in? That's the same if you're tiny or 90. Those are human needs that we have at every point in our life. At different stages and ages, different needs might be stronger than others.
But on a practical sense, how do people address those five in a nutshell?
How do you do it in a nutshell? Hoo-hoo. Well, come out to forest school with me, obviously, as one. But I think it's understanding that you're thinking about the whole person. And if you have those as a lens to look through when somebody is in front of you and they're having a hard time, whether they're angry or surly, whether they're non-communicative, if they're just not doing the work that they've said they'll do, actually having conversations and thinking which needs are being expressed right now, I think that can be a super helpful thing.
How does actually a coaching conversation become transformative?
It just happens. And it can happen sometimes with virtually nothing in the conversation apart from this person being given space and time to think, and questions, the occasional question. And sometimes it's that complete trust. Somebody comes into that conversation, they have complete trust that it's a safe place, and they think, their thinking just unlocks. And that's the magic of the coaching space.
What makes coaching different from just talking to a friend?
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Well, I guess in when you're talking with a friend, it's a lot of give and take, and it's a bit like you're playing tennis. It's sort of all ping pong, and stuff goes backwards and forwards. You share ideas, and they go backwards and forwards, and you share experiences, and they go backwards and forwards. But the coaching is very different. It's I'm not in that space. I'm holding the space, and it's all about you. And that might happen in a friend's conversation sometimes, might leave your friends upset about something. But generally, I think it's a bit like a conversation with a friend is a very interactive dance. It's a bit like a folk dance or something. And I wonder if a coaching conversation is more like ballet or something, where you've got this person who sets the scene up, and then the dancer goes off and does all this amazing dancing, and everyone's amazed by what's happening, and then they come back at the end to the character who's standing at the edge of the stage. So I think there's definitely a dance thing that can happen in coaching.
How can recalling a favorite memory reset your mindset?
Oh, that's so lovely. A favorite memory can take you to a place where your whole body is flooded with that, what it felt like to be there, to be on the beach or on the boat, or halfway up the mountain, or I don't know, driving a super fast car, whatever it is. And our brain is this clever thing that it takes us back in time, and that memory is stored, and it's just instantly floods our body with what that felt like. And that can change completely how you then approach an issue that you're talking about. And it can unlock your thinking. I think that for me is something powerful.
What can systems thinking teach us about leadership?
Oh, it's about connection, how everything is connected to everything else, and that our actions and our behaviors are going to have a massive impact. We might not think they will, but they can have a massive impact, and it can be right further down the line. And learning that the choices we make about how we treat people, and decisions we make around budgets and staffing, HR, and all of those things, just something like deciding that we're going to have an open plan office and not talking to anyone about it, that can completely undermine all the work that you've done with your team to support them and build them up. And knowing that actually if you're connected to people and you have the right systems in place for good, clear communication so people feel safe, then you get the very best work out of them. And you are together do the work that you're there to do.
How do you know when coaching is actually working?
I think because the client tells you it is. I think it's that You see their body change. You can see their kind of, somebody can come into a coaching conversation, they're all, and by the end of the coaching conversation, you see their shoulders are down, they're looking up, they're able to describe what they want to do, and they say how they're going to do it or how they're going to find out something. I think it's in body language, it's in the things that people say, and ultimately as if they come back. If you have a coaching conversation and it doesn't go well, just because everything in that situation is tricky, but that person feels that the work is being done, it doesn't mean coaching is always comfortable, because sometimes it can be super uncomfortable. I think does the person come back? Do they continue? Are they seeing the value in the conversation that's happening?
What does good chemistry look like?
Well, trust and non-judgment. And I think appreciation. There's something about recognizing the value of the other person. So I can coach somebody who thinks completely differently to me about issues. We might politically be very different. We might have very different values. But if we can come into that conversation honoring the fact that we're both here, non-judgment and trust, and I think that creates a space where really effective work can happen.
Have you ever met anybody that's uncoachable?
I've met somebody who went, I don't want to do any more coaching, because they weren't at the point in their life where they wanted to do the work.
And what would you say to somebody that feels that coaching isn't for them?
That's absolutely fine. And it might not be right now, but it might be right later. And it might never be right. I don't think, we're all human beings are very different from each other. Sometimes, and again, I've coached people, and then I've thought actually what they need is therapy, not me. And I think that was one of the really important things I learned very early on in my coaching at Henley Business School was, there's therapy, there's counseling, there's coaching, there's mentoring, and they can all thread together, and they can all be valuable, and they have similarities between them. But the coaching space is something where we honor the thinking of this person. And I'm not a medical professional. So if this issue that's being raised is not within my professional skills, then it's important that I can say to somebody, I think you need different support. And can I just add something there?
Yeah.
Which is why I think this Book Me Pro is so valuable, that we've got coaches and therapists in the same place. So actually there's that recognition that there's real value in both these approaches, and they can both offer something to each other. And I've certainly learnt from people that I've worked with who are therapists, and they've learned coaching skills. So I think it's very important what Book Me Pro is doing.
So on that point, I've fought to keep that. Mentors, investors, and things like that have told me to niche in one. Said no, they go hand in hand. I want both of them together. Can space and attention, like what happens in the coaching room, can that be more powerful than advice?
Oh, so much more powerful. Space and time gives you autonomy, and it gives you freedom, and it gives you that opportunity to think for yourself. It's recognizing that the coachee is the person, the client is the person who has the answers. I think when somebody is giving advice, they're not listening to what I'm saying, my problem. They're not listening, and they're thinking about their own answers and their own solution. When somebody listens, you feel heard, and you can think clearly, and you can find your own answers.
How do coaches pick the right tool for each client?
Oh, that's fun. That's a really fun part of coaching. I think it is that conversation with the client, saying, I've got something that might help us. Are you happy to experiment? And then you try it. Partly it's experience, and it's knowing the client, knowing what they enjoy, knowing the kind of thinking they need to do. but it is always an experiment. And you can ditch something. So you can try a tool, and if it's not working, you can go, this doesn't seem to be working. Let's just forget about it. Often I have to say to somebody, I had an idea, see what you think about it. And they'll either dive all in or say, oh, that sounds like fun. Or they're like, no, I don't want to do that today.
So thank you, Sarah. It's been absolutely wonderful speaking to you. I've learned so much and I really appreciate your time. You can find Sarah Lawful on the bookme.pro website. Just search for Sarah there and you'll see her coaching profile. So thank you and goodbye.
Thank you so much. Lovely to spend time with you. Bye bye.